I still remember the exact moment everything went sideways with my HOA president. It was 7:45 on a Tuesday morning when I first saw Dolores Hammond standing in my driveway, hands on her hips, glaring at my trusty Toro lawnmower like it had just insulted her entire family tree. The morning dew hadn't even dried on my lawn yet, but there she was, clipboard in hand, lips pursed so tight they could have cracked pecans. "That thing," she said, jabbing a manicured finger at my lawnmower with the kind of contempt usually reserved for a neighbor's unkempt dog, "is in violation of Section 14.2 of the Pine Hollow Estates Covenant." I took a slow sip of my coffee, adjusted my baseball cap, and sighed. At 62, I dealt with my fair share of busybodies, but Dolores was a Category 5 hurricane in a cardigan. She'd been HOA president for 4 years, turning our peaceful suburb into her personal fiefdom. "Morning to you too, Dolores," I said, keeping my tone as steady as a seasoned diplomat. "What's the problem with my lawnmower?" She flipped through her clipboard with the flair of a Broadway diva, though we both knew she had every rule memorized down to the punctuation. Lawn maintenance equipment must be stored in an enclosed structure when not in active use, she declared. "Your machine has been visible from the street for 19 minutes. I glanced at my watch. Actually, it's been 18 minutes. I just rolled it out to trim the hedges. Her left eyebrow twitched her tail when someone dared question her iron-fisted rule. "Regardless, you're in violation. I'll be issuing a formal warning." She scribbled furiously, tore off a neon yellow slip, and thrust it at me like it was a court summons. That was just the beginning. Over the next 3 weeks, Dolores launched a crusade against my lawnmower with the zeal of a medieval inquisitor. She filed a complaint about excessive engine noise when I started it at 9 a.m., well within the HOA's permitted hours of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. She measured the grass clippings left on my driveway and claimed they violated Section 9.4's debris accumulation standards, which she insisted allowed no more than 0.02 inches of organic matter on paved surfaces. She even argued that my lawnmower's red paint was visually disruptive to the neighborhood's harmonious color scheme, which apparently mandated earth tones only. I pointed out that her own mailbox was a garish purple, but she dismissed it as an artistic statement. The absurdity hit new heights when Dolores hired a landscaper to measure the turf impact radius of my lawnmower's wheels, claiming they left unauthorized depressions in my lawn that threatened the neighborhood's curb appeal. Spoiler alert, the landscaper found no violations, but that didn't stop her from calling an emergency home meeting to address what she called the lawnmower menace plaguing Pine Hollow. I showed up to the meeting, sitting in the back row of the community center with a thermos of coffee, watching Dolores unveil a 50-minute PowerPoint titled "The Dangers of Unregulated Lawn Equipment." She had charts showing the correlation between lawnmower visibility and declining property values. She had a grainy photo of my Toro, zoomed in like it was evidence in a CSI episode, with a red circle around it labeled public nuisance. She even had a slide predicting a dystopian future, where Pine Hollow was overrun with rogue lawnmowers, weed whackers, and God forbid leaf blowers. "This isn't just about one lawnmower," she proclaimed, clicking to a dramatic image of a suburban street buried under overgrown grass. "This is about preserving the prestige of Pine Hollow Estates as a premier residential enclave." Half the room was dozing off. The other half was scrolling X on their phones. But Dolores soldiered on, proposing a lawnmower prohibition amendment that would ban all powered lawn equipment except manual push mowers. That's when I raised my hand. "Dolores," I said, keeping my voice calm, "I use that lawnmower to maintain the community greenway. You know, the one the HOA voted to create 2 years ago for kids to play on." Her face turned the color of a ripe pomegranate. "That's irrelevant," she snapped. "You can use a push mower like a civilized person." "A push mower won't cut through the overgrown weeds on the greenway," I countered. "Then hire a landscaping crew," she shot back. "The greenway's a community project," I said. "We don't have the budget for that, and you know it." The meeting ended in a stalemate, with no vote on her amendment, but Dolores wasn't deterred. She started leaving passive-aggressive notes on my door, written in her impeccable cursive, accusing my lawnmower of environmental degradation and visual pollution. She circulated a petition to ban loud machinery, which got 5 signatures hers. Her husband Gerald's, their poodles, yes, she signed for the dog, and 2 neighbors who later admitted they thought it was for a community picnic. Then came the mailbox fiasco. Dolores had spent thousands on what she called a sculptural mailbox installation at the end of her driveway at Tyrant. abstract metal structure painted in swirling purples and blues, complete with LED lights. That blinked at night. She bragged about it on the neighborhood X group, calling it a beacon of artistic excellence. The problem, it was 14 inches over the property line, blocking the pedestrian path I used to access the greenway with my lawnmower. I politely asked her to move it 3 times, showing her the property survey from the county. She insisted the path was more of a guideline and that her mailbox was essential to the neighborhood's aesthetic identity. For weeks into our feud, I needed to mow the greenway before a community picnic. Dolores must have had a sixth sense, because the second I fired up my Toro, she came barreling out in a floral bathrobe and gardening boots, brandishing her clipboard like a night shield. "Stop right there," she bellowed, planting herself in front of my lawnmower. "You are not driving that monstrosity past my mailbox." I killed the engine and took a deep breath. "Dolores, your mailbox is on public property. I've shown you the survey. I need to get through." "Over my dead body," she declared, flinging her arms out like she was guarding the gates of Camelot. "This mailbox is a masterpiece. Featured in Suburban Style Monthly, it's worth more than your noisy, gas-guzzling relic." My Toro was electric, by the way, and in pristine condition, but I didn't bother correcting her. "Dolores, please move," I said. "The picnic's in 2 hours, and the greenway's a mess." "Then walk," she shrieked, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling the police. This is harassment. This is intimidation. This is lawnmower tyranny." I waited as she ran it into her phone, likely bewildering the 911 operator who'd heard it all before. A small crowd gathered, neighbors with coffee mugs, kids on bikes, even old Mr. Jenkins with his dachshund, all watching the spectacle unfold. Some pulled out phones to record. After 5 minutes of her theatrics, I'd had enough. "Last chance." "Dolores," I said, restarting the engine, "move, or your mailbox is going to be modern art." Her eyes widened. "You wouldn't dare." I shifted the lawnmower into gear and let it inch forward at a glacial 1 mile per hour. Dolores held her ground for about 2 seconds before diving to the side with a scream that could have shattered glass, claiming I was attempting vehicular assault. The mailbox, sadly, wasn't as agile. The lawnmower's blade clipped the base, and the whole gaudy structure toppled with a metallic clang. Its LED lights flickering out like a dying star. Dolores fell to her knees, clutching the twisted piece of metal, wailing, "My masterpiece. He's murdered my masterpiece." Gerald, her husband, appeared at the door, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, and muttered, "Dolores, let it go." The police arrived 20 minutes later, to officers who looked like they were counting the minutes until their shift ended. Dolores met them at the curb, still in her bathrobe, mascara streaking her face, holding bits of her mailbox like they were relics from a lost civilization. "Officers, arrest this man," she cried. "He destroyed private property. He tried to run me over. He's a danger to society." Officer Rodriguez, a no-nonsense veteran, pulled out a notepad. "Ma'am, can you explain what happened?" Dolores launched into an Oscar-worthy performance, claiming I'd revved my lawnmower like a drag racer and charged at her with murderous intent. She even suggested I was part of a lawnmower cartel plotting to destabilize Pine Hollow. Then Rodriguez turned to me. "Sir, your side of the story?" I pulled out my phone and played the video I'd recorded, because when you deal with someone like Dolores, you learn to document everything. The footage showed her blocking the path, refusing to move, and her theatrical dive, complete with sound effects. "Ma'am," Rodriguez said, suppressing a smirk, "it appears your mailbox was on public property." "So what?" Dolores snapped. "That doesn't give him the right to destroy it. Actually," Rodriguez said, "it does, and obstructing a public path is a misdemeanor. You could be cited for that." Dolores's jaw dropped, her face cycling through shock, rage, and disbelief. "But my mailbox," she sputtered. "It should have been on your property," Rodriguez said. "Sir, are you pressing charges?" I looked at Dolores, who was clutching her clipboard like a life raft. "No, officer," I said. "I think she's got enough to deal with." But Dolores wasn't done. Over the next week, she filed complaints with the city council, the mayor's office, and even the state's Department of Environmental Protection, claiming my lawnmower was a pollution hazard. She wrote a 10-page letter to our local congresswoman about the erosion of suburban sanctity by rogue lawn equipment operators. The HOA board, fed up with her antics and worried about legal exposure, called another meeting, this time about Dolores herself. The board president, a retired accountant named Evelyn Carter, laid it out plainly. Dolores, your actions have put the HOA at risk, blocking public paths, filing false police reports, harassing residents is unacceptable. Dolores stood, clutching a new binder labeled Pine Hollow Defense Files. I'm protecting our community's standards. She insisted. Someone has to stop the chaos. The only chaos, Evelyn said, is what you're causing. We've had 22 complaints about you in the last month, from people the weak to uphold our values. Dolores shot back. A board member, a soft-spoken librarian named Tom, spoke up. They're from people tired of living under your microscope. The vote was unanimous. Dolores was removed as HOA president and barred from any leadership role. For 7 years, she stood frozen as the gavel fell, her face a mix of fury and betrayal. You can't do this, she cried. I've poured my soul into this community. Your soul's been noted, Evelyn said coolly, and it's no longer required. The final blow came when the city attorney, who'd been quietly observing, handed Dolores an envelope. Mrs. Hammond, this is a citation for obstructing public property and filing false reports. The fine is $2,000. Dolores's face went from red to ghostly white. $2,000? She gasped. For what? For repeatedly placing structures on public property and wasting police resources, the attorney said. You can contest it, but the video evidence is airtight. She turned to me, her eyes blazing. This isn't over, she hissed. But it was. The next week, a city crew cleared the remains of her mailbox from the path. Dolores watched from her porch, occasionally shouting at the workers, but they ignored her. Within 2 months, she and Gerald listed their house for sale. The last time I saw her, she was barking orders at movers, her clipboard nowhere in sight. My lawnmower rumbled past, and her shoulders stiffened. But she didn't look my way. They moved to an apartment complex 3 towns over. Rumor has it she tried to join their HOA, but was rejected after they Googled her name and found the citations. The greenways never looked better. Every Monday and Wednesday, I drive my Toro down that path, delivering mulch and fertilizer to happy volunteers. Sometimes I think about Dolores, wondering if she's found a new mailbox to worship or new neighbors to torment. Then I remember the $2,000 fine and the look on her face when her reign of terror ended, and I smile.